Hi friends, welcome to Growing as Grown-Ups, where we believe each of us has the opportunity to keep growing in ways that can fundamentally improve our life effectiveness, our leadership influence, and our well-being. Through interviews, stories, and practical principles, we explore how you can accelerate your growth and unlock your potential to make the difference you want to make. And now, your hosts from the Leaders Lyceum, Dr. Sarah Musgrove and Dr. Keith Eigel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast. We have episode 8 for you today, Keith's conversation with CJ Stewart. So, Keith, why don't you tell our listeners who CJ is?
Yeah, CJ's an Atlanta native. He's known in some other communities around the country, but he's an Atlanta native. He grew up here, former Chicago Cubs outfielder, Amazon #1 best-selling author. And for the last 22 years, it's interesting, after his professional baseball career ended, he really leveraged that into becoming one of the top baseball development, especially hitting professionals in the whole country. And he's developed some of the top talent anywhere. Just as a sampling, if you're from the Atlanta area, former Braves superstars Jason Hayward and Andrew Jones are both students of CJ's, and he's just had, just an amazing impact in that world. He's so good at what he does. But I think the thing that captivates me most about CJ is that he and his wife, Kelly, started a nonprofit called LEAD that really works to empower the at-risk kids in our city, mostly young Black boys, to transform their lives so that they can transform the city, so that Atlanta can transform the world. And man, CJ gets what it means to be at risk. He grew up in Atlanta, one of Atlanta's absolutely roughest neighborhoods during that area, an area called Hollywood Brooks, down off Bankhead Highway. And but he was one of those kids that just through circumstances and what he calls the help of some kind strangers, he sort of beat the odds getting out of this. And it was actually baseball became the vehicle for that. CJ and Kelly, the work that they've started and what they're doing through LEAD is a way for these counted out kids, not the rock stars, not the superstars, not the nominated in kids, but the, as CJ likes to say, we scout the counted out, and he finds these kids that are going to fall through the cracks and helps them beat the odds from being counted out. We talk so often in the Growing as Grown-Ups podcast about how challenges are fuel for growth. And CJ takes this idea a step further. He believes our life purpose is actually rooted in our challenges, and so encourages us to embrace them and run to them like only we can.
Wow, what a cool guy. I don't know him as well as you do, but I'm just so inspired by what he has done with his life and his talents and his gifts. So I do know, just to give our listeners a heads up, that in the recording of this podcast, there was some construction going on in the background. So you'll hear a little bit of hammering and some different noises. So it's just part of life.
Sarah, let me just say, I have not been down to the facility yet. I've only seen pictures of it, but through some generous donors and the commitment that CJ and Kelly have made, they are building this hitting facility in the center of Atlanta in a really rough area that rivals in quality what the Braves have at SunTrust Park. So it is like they're going top notch to give these kids the kind of exposure. And it's just such a cool story. He's such an outspoken person. He is so into the racial tension things. Some of this will come up in the interview, but let's let it unfold.
All right, so here we have your conversation with CJ Stewart.
All right, everybody, I have CJ Stewart with me. And CJ, oh my gosh, my friend, what a privilege to have you on this podcast. I've got a handful of favorite people in the world, but you are one of them, and your story just blows me away. So thank you for spending some time with our audience today.
Yes, I'm excited to be with you, and also just sharing with everybody how you had such an impact on me so that I can be considered a good person. So yeah, this is great.
Super generous. That's nice. Hey, we will have introduced you a little bit already in the podcast prior to just some of the kind of biographical sorts of things, but your story is just such a remarkable story. We ask people a lot of times, think back in your life to challenges that you faced that have really shaped you made you into who you are now. And your story is just filled with this from start to finish. And for me, it is such an encouragement. It's so surprising. It's so impressive. And I'd love for you to just share a little bit sort of where you've come from and what that's meant to you, and sort of, a lot of the stuff that we'll talk a little bit about the book later in the interview, but just a lot of the story. I'm sure you've got kind of a short version of it, but would you mind telling folks a little bit of just kind of your story, where you came from, and we'll get more to what you're doing now toward the end of the podcast.
I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Northwest Atlanta. And I was a Grady baby. So I was born in 1976. So if you were born in Grady Hospital during that time, then for all intents and purposes, you were Black and you were poor. My mom was 16 years old when she had me. My dad was 21, both Atlanta Public Schools alums. And so my mom, she, and my grandmother and her siblings, they all lived near Frederick Douglass High School, which is in Northwest Atlanta. But she ended up graduating from Washington High School at 16, night school, because, she wanted to make sure that, in addition to having me, and thank God she didn't abort me. I mean, at that young age, it's tough to have children, but she graduated from Washington High School, night school. And my father attended Price High School. And, for the early parts of my years, we lived in Hollywood Brooks apartments. And life was tough now as an adult understanding, but when I was a kid, I didn't realize that we were poor with respect to people talking about not having food, not having lights and things like that. I don't ever remember that happening, but it is very clear from pictures of the apartments and just some of the things that I remember, the stress of the community that you can feel the poverty. And but then we matriculated, and my parents became working class. They've always worked hard. They've always been in my life, mom and dad. And then they matriculated to middle class, so they're living great life now. And but there were some things that they just couldn't afford for me to have as a child. And one was, as baseball started to get very expensive, they couldn't afford to keep me in it. But not getting too far ahead of myself on that part, as a kid, I just fell in love with the Chicago Cubs. My grandfather was a functioning alcoholic. He was a good man, and I just found a lot of calm watching Cubs baseball games with him in the summertime. And he would let me drink a lot of Coke. He may have had a little something in his, but I had nothing in mind but the sugar. And we would just sit here and watch the games, and I would get finished watching the games, and I would go outside and I would practice hitting rocks, throwing them at trees and all this stuff. And so my life from age 8, so that was around 88, 84. So 84, that's when the Cubs actually started to have a winning season again. And my whole life path and the decisions that I was making was based on me being a Chicago Cubs player.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge dream for an 8-year-old, right? You wrote a statement in the book that you attributed to your father, actually, after a spat he may have had with your mother, that having a strong enough why, W-H-Y, a strong enough why to deal with the stress, and that one of the things that it's almost like you got, I think, as a gift, because it's hard to build this into somebody, but you had this sense of why, even in the face of your parents maybe having a different why for you, and the why was baseball. And it's just interesting that through all of these challenges, that why has become more ingrained. And it's become the pathway even for the work that you do. Baseball's become the pathway for the work that you do, and your purpose. And that purpose stays in front of you so clearly. And all of these challenges that you faced, all of the difficulties with school, all of the things that you talk about so eloquently in the book, you know, there were battles. There were battles with things outside of you, but so often you talked about the battles inside of you, right? The things that you had to become. And I don't know what's your reaction to me just kind of bringing that part of the story up a little bit.
Yeah, so I really believe, just as I look at my life and in writing that book, it was important for me to do it because I had went through Leadership Atlanta in 2015, and what that book did was just help reveal just how fake I was, and I was trying to live this life and be accepted here in the city as a leader. But it was so many things that I didn't have, and Leadership Atlanta helped me to realize that I had everything that I needed, and I needed to stop trying to be something else. Like as a child, I mean, I heard repeatedly from lots of people that to be successful as an African-American man, you had to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and that, dummies played sports. But I just never could get excited about school in general, but definitely not becoming a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. I just really like sports. And so going through Leadership Atlanta, it was a very emotional year for me. And I was turning 40, which in the Bible, 40 is the number of testing. And I knew about even that. I mean, there was just so many of these different things that I had heard about that was all coming together at this year of 40 and going through Leadership Atlanta, where it was just constant. Every month we were involved in some type of learning session that was just peeling away my fakeness. Not to mention that we started out with opening retreat with you. And, even that, I mean, it was just kind of like, wow, just this whole new perspective and making me see myself. But so the book allowed me to get my story straight and make sure that I knew it so that I can be consistent with it versus having all these different stories. And I was trying to act like I had a college degree. I never said that I had one, but I was trying to figure out, okay, how do people act to have a college degree? Because I flunked out of college twice. I was trying to act like I cared about art. I was trying to act like I cared about playing golf. And it's like, I don't care about any of this stuff. So I had all these different personalities. So the book allowed me to just say, hey, look, here's who I am. This is what I care about. This is what I don't care about.
Yeah, it created the exercise of writing the book created the reflection that was required to really be grounded in your who and your why that you wanted to be about, the mission of your life in so many ways. Is that what you're saying?
That process of writing the book was so healing, and I think everybody should write a book. But at the very least, if you don't write a book, I mean, a weekly blog, just to help you be clear on what you care about. Because one of the things we do a great job of is before we lie to other people, we lie to ourselves daily. I mean, just like it's crazy. I used to do it all the time. Just fake it till you make it. God, I forget the quote, but it just talks about, like the daily struggle is just trying to be yourself. The world is wanting you to, be different things every day, and deep down inside what it is you want to do and what you care about, and you're just battling against what everybody else wants you to do. So, again, just being an athlete and dealing with baseball and trying to figure out how to lead in this city of Atlanta without a college degree. And if you do have a college degree and you're not at a prestigious university, then you almost don't matter. But then, for me, once I started to really lean in and write this book and be able to own story, I knew one of the advantages that I had was the ability to be consistent. And I also had joy on my side rather than happiness. I mean, I was around a lot of people that was happy, and I was feeling joy. And the difference is happiness is conditional, and joy is unconditional.
Mm.
And so, you know, for me, when I would show up in my $150 K&G suit on, and I'm having to compete with people that's got on tailor-made $1,000 suits, I knew that I had a life mission to be significant, serving millions, bringing them into a relationship with Jesus Christ, starting with my wife, Kelly, my daughter, Mackenzie, and my daughter, McKenna. And so I knew my mission, which is why, which gave me direction on who to talk to, who not to talk to, what to say yes to, always saying yes to assignments and no to invitations. And I had the freedom of not having to waste time and energy being places where I didn't want to be. And so, you know, just writing the book and just having some being grounded allowed me to just be able to focus and just experience and joy.
Oh my gosh. It was interesting to me as a developmental psychologist, as someone who kind of studies how we keep growing as people and eventually as grownups, is how much kind of the stage appropriate stuff, like the way your parents shaped so many important values into you in your first 10 years. And you just kind of took those on as their child. As you got into your teenage years and your early 20s, so much of this allowing the outside world to have influences with you. And you even speak a little bit about how some lucky things kind of happened that took you down a good path instead of a path but you had this odd sort of centering from 8 years of age, which is crazy to me, that I'm going to be a professional baseball player. Better than that, I'm going to play for the Cubs. Right. And that it was almost like a true north that probably at that point you couldn't describe it as a true north. It was just the thing that you wanted to be about. Mm-hmm. And yet what was challenging you during all that time is this, how you were going to be seen, allowing the career to define you, what other people thought of you, all of these, allowing these outside sources. And even as you reflected back earlier in this very conversation that we're having, you talked about how you were trying to be what everybody else wanted you to be, right? And it was like Leadership Atlanta was this thing that just allowed you maybe the point of reflection, the intentional challenges that just kept getting interjected. And it was the thing that shifted the outside inness to an inside out groundedness, to a knowing who you are, to knowing what you want to be about, to understanding what being involved in baseball and using that to fulfill your mission was going to be about for you. You know, CJ, one of the things that has, I think, just moved me about your story is your reinvestment in the community. There is a piece that you wrote in the book that is, it's sort of set up metaphorically or as an analogy about, think about a crocodile infested river. On one side of you, you have zebra trying to cross to the other side to get to food on lush plains. As the zebra enter the water, the crocs are ready and waiting to sink their teeth into them. Some of the zebra will make it across without incident. Others will inevitably get caught and become entangled within the croc's jaws. Some will die, some will manage to break free, yet with many scars, some of those scars may never heal. The zebra represent black boys in Atlanta. The crocs represent three evil barriers in life that are designed to destroy them: crime, poverty, and racism. I've decided not to be a spectator on the sideline of this struggle. I am in a lifeboat in the river right in the midst of the crocs. I'm waiting to rescue any boy and young man that will grab hold of a baseball bat that I extend to them, if they choose to grab hold of that bat. I will pull them into my boat and take them safely across the river. I've survived the very same struggle. And as a survivor, it's my duty, my burden, and my blessing to provide safe passage to others. I mean, that, I get why they grab that out and put that on the back of the book, but when it's told inside of the book, it's such a powerful story. And your mission in life is so grounded. It's so self-authored when there were so many forces early in your life that tried to pull you in different directions. Some of those were maybe self-imposed by you. Some of those were circumstantial.
One of the things that I discovered was conviction leads to connection. So once I am convicted, then it gets me connected to what I'm supposed to be doing or who I'm supposed to care about. That conviction is hard, and it's heart work, HEART, heart work. But it has me really connected to my purpose, and then my connection leads to consensus around what I'm supposed to do, and then that leads to collaboration and then change. So for the first time in my life, around 40, I just started realizing that, being convicted is an important thing. I also realized that the Latin word for passion is suffering. So whatever you're suffering from is what you're passionate about. And that also leads to purpose.
As you think now about what's going on in the world, I mean, we're doing this over Zoom because of this pandemic. We've got social unrest that's been brewing in the country at a new level that's taken place, racial unrest that is brewing in a way that I think many people kind of stuffed that in a drawer and thought, well, I think we're doing pretty good here, right? And we're not. There's a lot of growing that we as a country have left to do. You've been vocal about it. You've been sought out by the governor and senators and other people to kind of speak into this. So all of this challenge is brewing all around us right now. That's my point. There's all of this challenge is brewing around us right now. What is pushing on you right now that you can imagine being the type of thing that is going to change you 2 years, 3 years down the road, even changing you right now? What challenges are most prevalent in your world as we're speaking?
So, just embracing significance is the thing that I'm really, I struggle with, because, I got to really work hard to just not apologize for being great at what I do. I want to be around powerful people, which allows me to empower our ambassadors. Black boys that we scout and counted out that are struggling with grades, attendance, and behavior, that are living at and below the poverty level. Some of our boys don't fit that full criteria, but most do. But one thing we will not do is we will not serve boys who feel like they're better than the ones that are struggling the most and the most vulnerable in the city. So with that power, I get to empower. I want to make sure that I'm able to get things done to where my influence is going to also be able to help thousands of people. Now, everybody doesn't think that way, and it took me a while to get to that point. But now that I'm here, I ain't got time to be trying to help one kid at a time. I don't have time for that. One person at a time. That's not my mindset. I'm trying to make sure that anything that I do, that it can have an impact on millions of people. I want to be significant, serving millions, not directly. I don't know anybody that has the capacity to just deal with 1 million people directly, but indirectly, through my wife, through my daughters, through our ambassadors, through you, through other people, having an impact. But even for me, without a college degree, unapologetically, I am someone of significance, and I have a huge responsibility to develop counted out Black boys. Not boys that are on track to graduate from high school, not boys who are part of a family tradition of fraternities and sororities, not Black boys who come from a well-known last name. I'm talking about boys that are among the residue. So when I was born and raised in Bankhead, I was among the residue, not the bourgeois. not the bourgeois blacks. And so when I think about this city of Atlanta, for me, one of the biggest struggles is not even so much of dealing with white supremacy, which is prevalent, but it's dealing with the black bourgeois, the chosen black people who white people choose to serve the black community from a philanthropic standpoint. But then you take people like me that are down on the grassroots, working and serving these counted out boys. So, that's what I struggle with, is just holding my tongue when I absolutely want to cuss out folks in this city that are making it very difficult for poor black people to live a life of significance.
Man alive. CJ, every time we talk, you say something that I don't know what to do with. I mean, so we can be challenged by circumstances. We can be challenged in relationships. We can be challenged there are so many sort of outside-in challenges that we face. But however we are making sense of the world at the moment is our status quo for how we make sense of the world. It's just the lens through which we see the world. And every single time we talk, you say something that challenges my understanding. And then I get off the phone with you and I got to decide, well, what am I going to do with that? And
the feeling mutual. I mean, going through, like I said, just one of the things that I love about, that whole Leadership Atlanta experience, meeting you and being in that session for the opening retreat was so impactful, because it really started to help me. So there are frequently asked questions, and then there are should ask questions. And should ask questions make you go deep. Frequently asked questions is kind of like fishing on the shore. You don't catch big fish. Big fish don't live on the shore. They're like in the deep waters. But then even also too, going through Leaders Lyceum with you through the Atlanta Resource Foundation, and the introspection that you are forced to do. I could have gave up and just walked out of your session, but I was just like, man, I'm growing too much. Like I'm with myself and I'm learning from myself. And so even where I am now, which I'm not going to apologize. Right now I'm in a great place, which is important as a leader, because hurting people hurt people. So I'm imperfect, but I got a lot of people around me, including you, that convict me to get me reconnected or keep me connected to my life purpose. For me, my life is going to pure hell if I keep people that convict me away from me. So conviction is healthy.
Yeah, it's come up on almost every podcast we've done, but the importance of having the right people in your life, and you've already named 5 people since we started this podcast, but I love you made a statement. If you're trying to win alone, stop it now, right? And that's having those people around you that can push you, but also support you. If you had, I'm giving you the opportunity now to actually, what would you say as an encouragement to folks who are on the journey, maybe already kind of grounded in who they are, but many who may not be very grounded in who they are, kind of just trying to make it work, worrying about what other people think, wherever they are in the journey? What encouragement would you have for them to keep growing?
So I'll just start with, just dealing with it from a conviction standpoint. If you keep running from yourself, you're going to kill yourself. You're going to
wait, if you keep running from yourself, you're going to kill yourself.
you're gonna kill yourself. I mean, it's just exhausting to be living this life that other people want you to live versus you um, getting grounded in who you are and then being able to see and realize who you're supposed to become. Um, you look at your calendar and you probably got 10 things going on in the week that you absolutely don't care anything about. You're probably meeting with people that you don't care anything about. Now, everybody is important and everything is important, but we only have so much capacity to care for people and for things. And so just being worn out, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people during COVID, it was a blessing to just be able to break away from work and break away from doing all these extra things and just starting to realize, like, man, I actually got some time to like meditate, which when I'm thinking about meditation, I'm not thinking about it from I don't know, a scientific standpoint. It's just literally like just being still and just hearing your thoughts. And then being able to, take time to read books or listen to a podcast like this. So, my encouragement is just conviction leads to connection. With whatever if you feel disconnected, embrace conviction, because that conviction is going to get you connected to your purpose, your reason. And then that purpose is going to be sustained by grit, which is the relentless pursuit of purpose. So you've already gone through a lot in your life. If you're struggling right now, the good news is if you're struggling, at least you're not stupid.
I want to hear what you're saying. I want to hear it clearly because I think it's important. How do we run from ourselves in ways that keep us from, is it like hearing the conviction? What is it with the conviction? Just talk to me more about that if you don't mind.
I'm trying to think of the most recent. I mean, even in my house and me being married, I love my wife, and I say it, but then I got to make sure I'm doing it, and so that requires sacrifice, and it requires doing things that you don't want to do that you need to do. Like I may be at home and I want to spend time on my phone and scrolling through social media. That's what I want to do. But what I need to do is spend time talking to my wife and spending time with her doing Bible study. So if that's something that I'm neglecting, then I need to be doing that. Another example, this morning we just got a chocolate lab. And so with that chocolate lab, we've had it for less than a week. And, my wife, she's been spending a lot of time training the dog, and she asked me this morning, I woke up at 6:15 and she said, do you want me to go out and walk the dog? And I'm like, hell yeah, I do. But it was like, you know what, but I need you to get some rest, so I'll go do it. So it's just the difference between want and need. Okay, so there are things that I need to do that I'm putting off because I don't want to do it. And that's what I'm talking about, convicting. I have this inner voice that's saying, you need to do this. You need to work out. So the conviction is the voice that we hear that is telling us, it's like the angel that sits on the shoulder that says this is the right thing to do. Is that, I mean, that may be oversimplifying it, but no, that angel represents need, and then this bad angel is the want. So we end up doing everything we want to do and don't do the things we need to do. So I want to eat desserts every night. I need to work out and get rest. So you end up doing all of this, and then you're dying. Like you're going to die because you're not in good health. I I want to go hang out with these people. We're in a pandemic. It's going to be a large group of people. I want to do this, but I need to be safe. So I go out with all these people. I end up getting sick. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of want to do, need to do. But that's one of the lessons that I teach our ambassadors as well too, is, you know, commitment and discipline. Commitment is a promise I make to myself for myself. So starting with me. So I'm committing to being on this podcast. Before it's about you, it's about me. I'm making a promise to myself. So that way, if something comes up, it's got to be so important to the point where when I tell you, you're like, hey, CJ, I understand, we'll reschedule. But if it's not, I got to keep that commitment. But discipline is doing the things I need to do that I don't want to do. And so again, I'm just giving those angels names. So need and want.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to do more of what we need to do. I don't want to do this. I need to do it. And I can live a much happier life and have joy rather than the want side and just being happy.
And it takes you to the bigger me, the more important values, the thing that you really want to live into.
And just, damn, I mean, I want my life to matter. So I have two grandmothers that recently passed, and they lived in their 90s, both 95. And I was able to get both communion shortly before they passed. But they were, for all intents and purposes, ready to go. I mean, like, they weren't kicking and screaming trying to stay on earth. Like, they were ready to see the Lord. I want to, when it's time for me to go, I want to go. So right now, that's the reason why even in writing the book, I mean, I write blogs monthly. I try to understand, in addition to what I'm teaching our ambassadors to do, I'm starting with why we're doing it. Because even if I forget what to do and how to do it, if I can go back to why I'm doing it, then that can help me, and I can innovate from the why. So as I'm documenting all these things and developing my children and empowering my wife and being empowered by my wife, if the Lord takes me today, which I don't want to go, I mean, I'm not going to be kicking and screaming because I feel like I'm leaving a legacy. I'm leaving a playbook, just like the Lord left with the Bible. I'm leaving documentation on what's in my head.
Yeah. CJ, this is all so good. We're drawing a little bit to the end of our time. You know, the difference that you're making in the community, the mission that you have, just blows me away. The work you're doing blows me away. What are you most excited about in your world right now in terms of the impact that you're having that is furthering that legacy, that's building into that legacy that you're going to leave?
I'm most excited about just seeing people who otherwise would never be together. I'm excited about that. I mean, through the work that we do with LEAD, I got our ambassadors that are in relationship with boys from Westminster, Lovett, Marist, Woodward Academy, Holy Innocents. They come together through our Human Ambassador Project, which is a similar situation experience that I had with Leadership Atlanta. I'm excited about my daughters. You know, one is 19 at Southern University, and the other one is 13 at Lovett, and they're in spaces where, you know, they're talking about race, talking about politics with people that don't agree. Ironically, my daughter Mackenzie, who's at Southern University, she plays tennis. She's on the tennis team. They're on scholarship, and the majority of her team have women from the continent of Africa on it. And so being from Africa is very different than being African American. And so two totally different perspectives. And so here my daughter is coming from Westminster, a predominantly white private school, going to an HBCU, but there's conflict from those different perspectives. And then McKenna being at Levitt, even with the recent presidential election and the divisiveness that we have in the country, she's in a place where she's uncomfortable every day. Mackenzie's in a place. So I'm excited about helping people navigate that. So if you're uncomfortable, great. That's a good starting point. You're being convicted. And then the next thing is if you stay in there long enough, you're going to get connected with a purpose that is going to bring you joy. And then when you start to take that for granted and not handling that well, then God willing, you'll get convicted again. Just don't run from it. And then it's like you can live this great life. So I'm excited about helping people be convicted.
Yeah, convicted to get connected to their purpose. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. For folks listening to the podcast, Living to Lead and LEAD is not only the name of the nonprofit organization that you run to scout the counted out, right? Did I say that right?
Yes.
But it stands for. Remind me what LEAD stands for.
It stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, and Direct, which is I think a great mantra not only for myself but for everybody else. Just launching, being exposed, advise, and direct.
Launch, Expose, Advise, Direct, a story of passion, purpose, and grit. You can get this on Amazon, folks. If you're watching the video, there's the cover of the book. I have to tell you, this book I've read twice. Both times I think I've read it in an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. I've got it all marked up. CJ, your story is amazing. It's more than inspirational, it's challenging. And you and I grew up in some pretty different circumstances. And man, the way your story intersects with my life and gets me to look at my life is a big deal. And so I hope folks gain that today. But thank you for sharing that story with us today and just sharing your perspective on what's going on in your world. I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Keith, for just giving me a voice. I mean, right now, just as we deal with the racial climate, one of the things that African American people in general, but me specifically as an African American man, I want my voice to be heard. I want my pain to be shared so that people can be empathetic and then come alongside me to help, if for no other way, just to be in prayer. But when people see me and they may say, well, God, CJ, he's not himself. Ask me why. And so those are the kind of things people want to be heard. So the fact that you're giving me this opportunity to have this space and creating this brave space for me to speak is important. That's one of the things that Dr. Catherine Meeks talks about, is having a brave space. So I am reluctant to say a lot of things. And so I just feel like it's my responsibility when I don't feel comfortable saying things to be brave. And that's where my authentic self can come out. So thank you.
Your bravery is unbelievable, CJ. Thank you for spending time with us.
Take care. My bad. My pleasure.
Keith, what a fun guy. He's so interesting and so fascinating, and I'm really eager to read his book. I may have to steal it from your bookshelf here in a little bit. But I think...
Let me just say real quick, folks, I cannot encourage you enough to go on Amazon and spend $10 to buy this book. It is literally an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, depending on your reading speed. And it's just so well thought through, but you really get a sense of parts of CJ's story that we didn't have time to cover in the interview.
Yeah, I love it. And we will have the link to that on our website and in the show notes as well. So we will make it easy for you to support CJ and hear more of his story. But I think one of the things that struck me the most, especially in light of what we do for a living, right? This idea of helping grownups grow up, or keep growing, is he talks about this big life transition that happened for him around the age of 40. And developmentally, it was just so appropriate. But he talks about how he realized he was being fake in his life. He was pretending that he was something that he wasn't. He was pretending that he cared about things he didn't care about. And he got to the point in age 40 where he just said, you know what? Here's who I am. Here's what I care about. Here's what I don't care about. He got really clear on his mission, which he can just rattle off in a heartbeat. And he said that essentially there was this freedom that came with that he was able to then approach all of these decisions, all of these choices in life. And it's like, I knew what I needed to say yes to. I knew what I needed to say no to. I didn't have to try to do everything. I didn't have to try to make people happy. And like, that is exactly the thing that we love to do, is help people come to that realization and get grounded in who they are, so that they can then be so much more effective in the way that they lead, because they're clear on what they're leading towards.
Yeah. I mean, his influence post that transition, he has the governor of the state of Georgia, 2 senators, a retired senator, come to him to get his take on things of what's going on in the inner city, because he is so clear on who he wants to be that it's almost made his influence more efficient in a way. But I'm struck by something that you said in this, Sarah, in that so many people, so many of us even revert back into these areas where we are allowing our worry about what others think of us, about are we fitting in, are we doing what we're needed, all these kind of outside forces that wind up defining and wasting so much of our time. And man, CJ's just, it sounds harsh when he talks about it to me, even when I listen back on the interview. It sounds harsh when he says, I've decided what I care about and what I don't care about. And he said, look, everything's important, but I got to let go of the stuff that I don't care about, that doesn't fit my mission. And the way his influence has stepped up in the community post that transition, that's what I want for our listeners. I want them to know what they want to be about, the difference that they want to make, that they would be able to rattle off their mission statement like that.
Yeah, really, really true. I think another thing that I really loved, and CJ's so good with his alliterations and his catchphrases, is he always can find all the words that start with the same letter, but and I'm not going to remember them all, but conviction leads to connection. And I've sat with this. I heard your conversation with him a few days ago, and so I've kind of sat with that for a few days and thought about what it meant. And I think it's his language around the idea that we talk about of conviction being a challenge. It's something that is more of an internal challenge of something going, ooh, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't feel good. What do I do with that? And so often, as he said, we would try to get away from that. We would think conviction is something bad. We don't want to deal with it, but to say, what does that tell me matters to me? That then we can lean into it and get more connected to our values, more connected to who we are, more connected to what matters to us. And then that leads to consensus and a couple other things that it ends up with leading to change. And so, conviction. And then he talked about surrounding himself with people that convict him, right? And we've talked about this before, the importance of these developmental relationships, the people that are going to speak truth to you, that are going to hold you accountable. And it's, as you said at the beginning, it is his way of saying challenge is so important to me that I'm going to make a motto out of it, right? Conviction leads to connection. And that's what he said he wished for our leaders, for our listeners, as they grow in their leadership, that they would embrace conviction. And I love that.
Oh my gosh, I've got nothing to add to what you just said. It's all so true, including his ability to alliterate. But one of my favorite parts of the interview was the way he sort of embraced how you feel the conviction. It's the stuff that's bothering you in your life. It's the stuff doesn't seem right, or that it's almost like a spiritual thing. It's like, what is this that's sitting in the background, right? And that the great thing about conviction, I can't remember exactly how he said this, but it's like, oh, good, there's another opportunity, right? It's like, so I love that. I'm so glad we got to have him on the podcast. He, again, is just one of my favorite people. And I know I said this in the interview, Sarah, and CJ, I have to tell you, was a little more bridled in the interview than he is in real life one-on-one. I mean, he can get in your face, and he's been in my face. And he just says things that my whole way of making sense of the world, I have to hit pause and go, do I actually have the best version of that for me, given what he just said? And so often I find that I don't. So I hope for folks that they had a little bit of a sense of that sort of, right? I need to rethink this a little bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really, I loved when you acknowledged that, like real time in the conversation, you kind of said, I don't know what to do with what you said. I need to sit and think about that. And I think it's a good demonstration to our listeners about this idea we've talked about in Carl's interview and Mike's interview, where it's just, we need to be open and we need to listen and we need to learn from other people and think, how does that fit with my current understanding, and how can I grow and expand and be more mature? And so I think it shows the ways that you're doing that personally, even though this is an interview about CJ. I think that was great.
Yeah.
So one last thing for our listeners, you guys have heard us talk about it, but we have a tool, and I love seeing how many of you have already downloaded it. But the Growth Gap tool on our website, growinggrownups.com, is a really good way for you to find that conviction, right? Find something that's bugging you, figure out what it tells you matters to you, and then use that as your opportunity to get connected to what really matters to you and lead to some change in your own life. So we would love for you to go get that resource, growinggrownups.com. You just download it. We've got a walkthrough guide that kind of takes you through step by step how to do it, what it means. And we just would love for you to do that. Additionally, if you want to go deeper, our online course is now up and running, which I'm so excited about. We've got a number of people going through it that have given some really great feedback on it. And so you can sign up for that as well on our website. And for listeners of our podcast, we want to give you an opportunity to get in at a discounted rate. So if you use the promo code podcast50, you will get 50% off the enrollment fee. So that is exciting. So go check out those resources. Take what CJ said to heart. Keep growing. Keep becoming more and more grounded in who you are, and find that conviction in your own world.
Folks, embrace these conversations. Embrace the tools that Sarah just went over. Lean into them and journey well.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Growing as Grown-Ups. Take a second and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and tell your friends. You'll find all of the goods related to this episode, including the transcript, videos, links, and other ways we can help you keep growing as a grown-up, on our website, growinggrownups.com. Growth isn't easy, but it's completely within your reach. Until next time, journey well, friends.